Hey good people, and welcome back to the channel. My favorite moment of the season is finally here, which is the reunion, and in a few moments, I'll be sharing my thoughts and feelings on part 1 of the reunion. And for this video, I'm gonna just hit on the important parts of the reunion and give my commentary on it. So without any further delay, let's jump right in. First on the menu is whether or not Jeffrey and Dre are still together. And surprise, surprise, they are not. Now who in the world would have guessed this? I said it fairly early on that Jeffrey was used to most of these guys just to stay on the show, and that her romance with Dre was kinda fake. But when nephew Tommy tries to find out why they're no longer together, there's a debate between Jeffrey and Dre, which turns into fuel for the gender war. Apparently Dre feels some type of way because Jeffrey gave conflicting answers about why her kids' fathers weren't in the kids' lives, whereas Jeffrey denies that she's the reason why her kids can't see their fathers. Jeffrey has shown tons of red flags throughout the season, and I gotta side with Dre on his concerns. There's nothing wrong with a childless man dating a woman with kids, but in my opinion, that man does have the right to inquire about the dynamics between the kids' fathers and the kids. The woman in turn has the right to not answer any questions she doesn't want to answer, and the man in turn has the right to come to whatever conclusion he comes to about it. Now the concept of having rights is a wonderful thing when it's applied equally, but what it all boils down to is that Jeffrey and Dre accuse each other of lying on the show. But Jeffrey has been accused of lying a number of times, and the way that Jeffrey generalized all black men as being deadbeat fathers and doubled down on it let me know that she's not really thinking rationally about the situation. Long story short, Jeffrey and Dre never had a chance. Now let's move on to Corvia. During the season, Corvia came off as a gold digger, and it rubbed some of the men the wrong way. Now I see both sides of the issue. For ladies like Corvia, they have the right to want whatever they want, and if they don't want to compromise on their standards, then they shouldn't. But on the flip side, less than 10% of the men out there will make the kind of money that Corvia expects a man to make. So for the remaining 90% of the men out there, it kind of sucks to encounter women that don't view them as real men because of their lack of generational wealth. But at the end of the day, me and guys like me would treat somebody like Corvia like a bill collector and avoid her. Next, we move on to a scene featuring Tony, Morgan, and Lyndon. During the earlier parts of the scene, the spotlight was on Lyndon and his failed connections on the show. What I noticed during the scene was that Lyndon and Morgan were holding hands, and Lyndon admitted to having a girlfriend. Now I think it's safe to say that if Lyndon really had a girlfriend and it wasn't Morgan, then that girlfriend would feel some sort of way about him holding Morgan's hand while on TV. But later on in the reunion, nephew Tommy circles back to the love triangle between Lyndon, Tony, and Morgan, and it doesn't take long for Morgan and Tony to go at it like cats and dogs. The Morgan that went off on Blake earlier in the season also showed her tail with Tony in this episode. But in my opinion, these folks are entirely too old to be carrying on like this. Next, we get a scene that catches up with the man of the mystery named Blue. For the past few months, I consider Blue to be a laid-back version of Clifton from the Potomac season. But Blue is also the man of surprises for the reunion. First, Janique accuses Blue of letting her get voted off of the show so that he could date her behind the scenes. Now I don't know what's so bad about that, because the show was designed as more of a dating version of Survivor instead of a legitimate opportunity for singles to find love, and no matter what Blue did, Jonique was eventually going to get voted off due to her lack of connections. But the bombshell involving Blue dating Kayla from last year's Ready to Love was the shocker of the year, and I was completely shocked because Blue is nothing like Randall or Mike from last season. I can't see what they would have in common, but more power to them. And seeing Z get in her feelings because Blue was trying to talk to her while officially committed to Kayla was a little silly in my opinion. She tried to dry snitch on Blue at the reunion, and in my opinion, a situation like that should have been handled behind the scenes or just get it all out in the open in front of everybody. Now if Blue is the villain that he's being painted to be, then I doubt that him and Kayla will last past 6 months. Now we get a quick scene featuring Febreze, who was missing in person from the reunion, but through video chat, he claimed that the women on the show were hypocrites for complaining about his focus on sex, and he shared that he is currently in a relationship with somebody. Now the interesting thing about this scene was that the women actually proved Febreze right. When nephew Tommy asked the ladies why they had an issue with Febreze on the topic of the discussion, they admitted that they had an issue with him because of his age, which to me means that if he were younger and more attractive, then they would have no issue with what he said. Now imagine that. Now briefly moving on to Blake and Sue, we learn that they're currently in a relationship, and they're getting it in like two jackrabbits trapped in a tube sock. But if I had to rate this episode, I would have to give it a C+. It was definitely filled with some surprise moments, but I wanted to see Blake and Jeffrey get to the bottom of what happened between the two of them during the season. I also want the women to address why they targeted Blake for elimination so many times. Furthermore, it sucked that great value Spike Lee wasn't given any time to speak his piece during the reunion. I know that he was the first to get eliminated, but one could argue that he might have been one of the best guys on the show. But this marks the end of my review. Feel free to leave all comments below in the comment section, and I'll be sure to reply to everybody. Until next time, stay tuned and stay safe. Peace.